Give praise, glory, and honor to the Most High Yah by way of Yahushua HaMashiach, our Master this day. Search the scriptures, for in them you think you have eternal life, and there they which testify of me, and you will not come to me that you might have life. I receive not honor from men, but I know you that you have not the love of Elohim in you. So we're going to swing over here and we're going to look at Proverbs chapter 25 and verse 1.
What about them? Listen, what about them?
And it says, these are also the Proverbs of Solomon, which the men of Hezekiah, king of Yehuda, copied out. It is the esteem of Elohim to conceal a thing, but the honor of kings is to search a matter out. Search out a matter. The Shamahim for height and the earth for depth, and the heart of kings is unsearchable. Take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the final. So when we look at this here, when we look at dross, the Hebrew word for dross is sig, or S-I-Y-G, which comes to the root word sub, which it means to retreat, to deviate, to drive back, and to backslide. So the Most High, according to his power and his secret counsel, uses adversity to cause these things to pass away. So in order for, so when we sit back and look at it, in order for sin to be moved out of the way, he causes a little trouble. So let's look at Acts 14 and 22 real fast. Acts 14 and 22. Probably make about 20. And it says, well, verse 19, and there came thither a certain Yahudim from Antioch and Iconium, who persuaded the people, and having stoned Paul, drew him out of the city, supposing he had been dead. Howbeit, as the disciples stood round about him, he rose up and came into the city, and the next day he departed with Barnabas to Derbe. And when they had preached the gospel to that city, and had taught many, they returned again to Lysteria and to Iconium and to Antioch, confirming the souls of the disciples, and exhorting them to continue in the faith, and that we, through much tribulation, must enter into the kingdom of Elohim. So when we sit back looking at this, the adversity or the trouble is what will cause a man to cease from transgression. So when we look at that, let's look at something. Let's look at Acts chapter 9, and let's look at Paul, and let's see an example of that. Let's look at Paul first. Acts 9 and 1. And it says, and Saul, yet bringing out threatenings and slaughter against the disciples of the master, went unto the high priest and desired of him letters to Damascus to the synagogues, that if he found any of this way, whether they were of women, men or women, he might bring them bound into Jerusalem. And as he journeyed, he came to Damascus, and suddenly there shone round about him a light from Shamahim. And he fell to the arras and heard a voice saying unto him, Saul, Saul, why persecute thou me? And he said, Who art thou, master? And the master said, I am Yahushua, whom thou persecute. Is it hard for thee to kick against the pricks? And he, trembling and astonished, said, Master, what wilt thou have me to do? And the master said unto him, Arise and go into the city, and it shall be told thee what thou must do. And the men which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice, but seeing no man. And Saul arose from the arras, and when his eyes were opened, he saw no man, but they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And he was 3 days without sight, neither did eat nor drink. So now you sit back and look at it. He's made this man go blind for 3 days. The whole purpose for this express reason, let's look at 2 Timothy chapter 1, if I'm not mistaken. Actually, it's 1 Timothy chapter 1, because I came on straight to it. And let's look at about verse 6. Or about verse 5. 1 Timothy chapter 1, about verse 5. So it says, now the end of the commandment or the purpose is charity out of a pure heart and of a good conscience of faith unfeigned. Now let's turn around and let's sit back and you think about that. He says the whole purpose of the commandment is love out of a pure heart and of good conscience of faith not faked. So I want you to let's sit back and let's look at something showing forth faith unfeigned. Let's go to Exodus chapter 12. Hold this 1 Timothy chapter 1. Let's at Exodus chapter 12. And then we'll look at something with Daniel them too, because that's coming to my mind as well. Let's see, right this here, right? The purpose of the commandment is for you to have a faith that you can't fake. We'll look at an example of that right here in the beginning. Exodus chapter 12 and about verse 5. And it says, your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats, and you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Yasharal shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorposts of the houses, wherein they shall eat it. And they shall eat the flesh that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread with bitter herbs. They shall eat it. Eat not of it raw nor sodden at all with water, but roast with fire his head with his legs, with the pertness thereof. And you shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. And that which remain of it until the morning you shall burn with fire. And thus shall you eat it with your loins girded and your shoes on your feet and your staff in your hand. You shall eat it in haste, for it is Yahuwah's Passover. So this is what it says. For I will pass through the land of Mizraim, is not I will smite the firstborn in the land of Mizraim, both man and beast, against all the gods of Egypt. I will execute judgment, I am Yahuwah. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where you are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you, and the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you, when I smite the land of Mizraim. So we understand, if they put this blood on this doorpost, they have to believe. There can't be no faking in their faith. Because the purpose of that commandment was love out of a pure heart and faith unfeigned. This was the purpose and the end of this instruction that he just gave them. If they don't follow this instruction, they show forth they don't have any faith. Therefore, they will not get the desired result. The plague that was going to fall on the people of Egypt was going to fall on them. So before we even look at Daniel, stop. Let's take back and let's sit back and let's look at something in John chapter 8. About verse 12. Just something that Hamashiach say. About verse 8 and 12 is cool. 8 and 12 is cool. John 8 and 12. And it says, then spake Yahushua again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. Now we can sit back and we can look at in the law an example of that. When the Most High, come on, Lizzie. When the Most High came through Egypt for 3 days and 3 nights, he caused darkness to be upon the land of Egypt, but light in the land of Goshen where the children of Yasharal dwell, that there might be a difference between the two. So the children of Egypt, they didn't know where they were going, sitting back showing forth that they walked in darkness or they walked in bondage. Because when he came to sit back and Moses telling him, hey, man, I serve the Most High Yah, he said, let my people go. He said, who is Yah? I know not such a person. Therefore, I know it's not such a person. I will not let them go, because he didn't have that heart of faith or know that purpose of the commandment. Because if he would have known the purpose of the commandment and had faith unfeigned in his heart, don't you think he would follow what Moses said? But instead, he chose not to do that. Some of us sit back and show the same similitude of behavior that Pharaoh possessed. Because we hear the commandment, we know the purpose of the commandment is to get you to love Yah and to have a faith that can't be faked, a solid, rock solid foundation and belief in it. So when you sit back and you see him give the instruction of them taking this lamb and killing it and placing the blood upon it, you have to love him to follow it, and then you have to believe that he's going to do what he says, because you can't see this. You know what I'm saying? This is the end of the commandment. This is the purpose of it. So when we turn around and we see Hamashiach saying those that follow him will not walk in darkness. So when you turn around and you look at y'all making it go dark in Egypt for that period of time. For those who were in darkness, they didn't know where they were going. But those that were in the light, they could see because they were walking in the light of the world. I think that's Exodus chapter 10, if I'm not mistaken. Let's go over there, Exodus chapter 10. Let's look at it while we hold in John chapter 8. Exodus 10 and 20. Exodus 10 and 20. He said, but Yahuwah hardened Pharaoh's heart, so he would not let the children of Yasharal go. Well, we know what hardens a man heart, according to Hebrews chapter 3, is the deceitfulness of sin. See, sin can look so attractive and look so good, but yet it can harden your heart and make you go against God to your own destruction. And Yahuwah said unto Moses, stretch out thy hand toward Shamahim, and that there may be darkness over the land of Mizraim, even darkness which may be felt. And Moses stretched forth his hand toward Shamahim, and there was a thick darkness in all the land of Mizraim 3 days. And they saw not one another, neither arose any from his place for 3 days. But all the children of Yasharal had light in their dwellings. So before we even swing back over here, look at 2 Corinthians chapter 4 about verse 1. He said they didn't have no light in their dwelling. They didn't know where they were going. They had no idea what was going on. They didn't raise up out their place. They stayed right where they were at. We're still holding 1 Timothy chapter 1 and about verse 5 and John chapter 8. 2 Corinthians 4 and 1. And it says, therefore, seeing we have this ministry, as we have received mercy, we faint not. Listen, stop playing. Y'all stop playing with that beverage. Drink it or leave it alone. Therefore, seeing we have this ministry, as we have received mercy, we faint not, but have renounced the hidden things of dishonesty, not walking in craftiness, nor handling the word of Elohim deceitfully, but by manifestation of truth, commending ourselves to every man's conscience in the sight of Elohim. But if our gospel be hid, it is hid from them that are lost, and whom the God of this world hath blinded the minds of them which believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Mashiach, who is the image of Elohim, should shine unto them. So we turn around and we look at this similitude. You come back to John chapter 8. That Pharaoh is the God of that world, or the power of that world, or the power over Mizraim. He is the leader in that place. And because of the deceitfulness in his own heart, those people were blinded because of him. So we see Pharaoh is looking at Pharaoh according to this epistle letter, looking at him in the same pattern that you would look at Satan, because he's the one who had the power and authority, and because of his deceitfulness and his unbelief, it caused everyone in the land to be darkened and to dwell in darkness, to where they couldn't see where they were going. Because he was the one who was deceiving them, having them believe that the false gods that they worship and the things that they doing, there wasn't going to be any retribution. And now these people had a judgment come down upon their head, because they believe not. He said, I am the light of the world. He that believes on me shall not walk in darkness. Well, the children of Yasharal, believing on Yahuwah, they did not walk in darkness. They had light in their dwellings. Now, we're going to look at something as it pertains to it, because we're looking at adversity. When you turn around and you look at it, when you look at the children of Egypt, you know, you sit back and you look at it, okay, they're the children of bondage, and through that adversity, this is, we already know in time past, this is why he didn't let them go through the water to be immersed. Because they would have been able to become the sons of Elohim and inherit the kingdom, because they went through much tribulation. You know what I'm saying? When you turn around and you look at us, we didn't go through any tribulation. Our tribulation was before the plagues. You know what I'm saying? It was kind of reversed. This is why when you turn around and you look at it, to be honest, that adversity that they went through beforehand, which we'll look at that, was to get them ready to inherit the kingdom, because they had already went through that adversity. So now Yah is showing himself powerful on their behalf to immerse them to become the sons of Elohim. You know what I'm talking about? And then bring them in the wilderness and take them through more adversity. The only reason why they went through more adversity is because their hearts were hard to begin with. It had not been purged. Let's finish this John chapter 8 though. start at about verse 12. Then spake Yahushua again unto them, saying, I am the light of the world. He that followeth me shall not walk in darkness, but shall have the light of life. The Pharisees therefore said unto him, Thou bear record of thyself, thy record is not true. Yahushua answered and said unto him, Though I bear record of myself, yet my record is true. For I know whence I came and whither I go, but you cannot tell whence I come and whither I go. Ye judge after the flesh, I judge no man. And yet if I judge, my judgment is true. For I am not alone, but I and the Father that sent me. It is also written in your law that the testimony of two men is true. I am one that bear witness of myself, and the Father that sent me bear witness of me. Then said they unto them, Where is thy Father? Yahushua answered, Ye neither know me nor my Father. If you had known me, then you should have known my Father also. You see this here, how the key thing, how the Pharisees sounded like Pharaoh? How you telling them how they walking in darkness? Because what did Pharaoh say? Let's look at Exodus chapter 6 and let's look at what Pharaoh said. Because they talking like Pharaoh talking. Actually, Exodus 5 and 1. Pharaoh ain't even sitting back looking at that, all that adversity, what they were going through as a group, could have been able to allow them to enter into the kingdom. And it says, And afterwards Moses and Aaron went in and told Pharaoh, Thus saith Yahuwah Elohim of Yasharal, Let my people go, that they may hold a feast unto me in the wilderness. And Pharaoh said, Who is Yah? You know not my father. Ain't that now? If he's sitting back asking who is Yah, then he don't know who Yah is or know where Moses come from, do it? Because who sent Moses? Yah sent him, didn't he? And Pharaoh said, Who is Yah that I should obey his voice to let Yasharal go? I know not Yah, neither will I yet Yasharal go. And they said, The Elohim of the Hebrews have met with us. Let us go, we pray thee, 3 days' journey into the desert, and sacrifice unto Yahuwah Elohim, lest he fall upon us with pestilence or with the sword. And the king of Mizraim said unto them, Wherefore did ye Moses and Aaron let the people from their works get ye unto your burdens? Pharaoh said, Behold, the people of the land now are many, and you make them rest from their burdens. When you turn around and let's look at something in Matthew chapter 23, because we good, and we come back to John chapter 8. We know Hamashiach say, All ye that are heavy laden, come unto me and I'll give you rest. I'll cause you to rest from your burdens. Well, you turn around and you look at the scribes and Pharisees are no different than what Pharaoh was saying, because he wasn't causing or seeking to cause the people to rest from their burdens. Look at Matthew 23 and about verse 13. Matthew 23 and about verse 13. And it says, But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for ye shut up the kingdom of Shamahim against men. For ye neither go in yourselves, neither suffer ye them that are entering to go in. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense make long prayer. Therefore you shall receive the greater damnation. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you compass sea and land to make one proselyte, and when he's made, ye make him twofold more the child of hell than ye all yourselves. So again, what do we sit back and we see? Pharaoh is not causing these people to leave to go serve Yah, are they? And the scribes and Pharisees are not either. How were the scribes and Pharisees keeping the people ensnared by not having faith unfeigned and pure love out of the purpose of the commandment? Because they had them caught up in the traditions and commandments of men. See, you're about to sit back and see that about what he says. He said, Ye fools. Verse 16 says, Woe unto you blind guides would say, Whosoever shall swear by the temple, it is nothing. But whosoever shall swear by the gold of the temple, he is a debtor. Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gold or the temple that sanctify the gold? And whosoever shall swear by the altar, it is nothing. But whosoever swear by the gift that is upon it, he is guilty. Ye fools and blind, for whether is greater, the gift or the altar that sanctify the gift? Whoso therefore shall swear by the altar, swear by it, and all things thereon. And whoso swear by the temple, swear by it, and him that dwell therein. And he that swear by Shamahim, swear by the throne of Elohim, and by him that sit thereon. Because we already know this by the law. What's greater? What you bring to sacrifice or offer to Yah, or he who made the temple? You know what I'm saying? So this is how the people get caught up to where the purpose of the commandment is a pure love and faith, not faith. But because the scribes and Pharisees, they were coming for appearance. So therefore, that's why they try to avoid the tribulation. That's why he sat back and said, bring forth fruits meet for repentance. Through much tribulation, you got to enter the kingdom of Elohim. It's got to be some adversity. You understand what I'm telling you? See, when there's no adversity, then how can you actually know how far you're going to stand if you haven't faced any adversity? See, the book of Proverbs states, he said, if you faint in the day of adversity, your strength is small. Because the adversity, as we already know, it says he learned obedience by the things he was suffered, or he was made perfect through sufferings. So the adversity is what made him perfect. Adversity is what's going to get you to where you need to be at. See, the Egyptians were going through that adversity, but their hearts were so hard that they would never turn to Elohim. You understand what I'm telling you? So let's look at Exodus chapter 2, and you can sit back and look at the adversity that the children of Yashara'el went through. But again, when he brought them in the wilderness, he took them through more adversity. The purpose of this adversity is to get you refined, to purge away the sin. Once you purge away the sin, then you're not going to want to go back to the way from whence you came. Exodus 2. Exodus 2 and about 23. And it came to pass in the process of time that the king of Mizraim died, and the children of Yashara'el sighed by the reason of bondage. They cried, and their cry came up unto Elohim by the reason of the bondage. And Elohim heard their groaning and remembered his covenant with Abraham and with Isaac and with Jacob. And he looked upon the children of Yashara'el, and Elohim had respect unto them. Now we know from time past, by the reason of the bondage, he heard the cries of Yahushua when he was on that state. Now we know when we come unto him and we cry unto him to say to take our burdens, and he hears our cries, and he has respect unto us because we've crucified ourselves with him. So let's look at Romans chapter 6 real fast. We'll come back to Exodus. That's why Peter told you to have the same, let the same mind be in you, the same mind that it was in Yahushua HaMashiach, that though that he suffered in the flesh, that he might cease from sin. The suffering of the flesh is that tribulation or that adversity. That adversity is what's going to make you pure. It's what's going to purify you. It's what's going to purge away the iniquity. As we know, he was taken through the furnace of affliction. It purged away his iniquity. And we're still going to finish with Paul. But hold on. I'm trying to sit back and think. What did I want? What did I just say? Yeah, Romans chapter 6. It's a lot of stuff in my head. Romans about 6 and about 3. Say, know ye not that so many of us as were immersed into Yahushua HaMashiach were immersed into his death? Therefore we are buried with him by immersion into death, that is like as Mashiach was raised up from the dead by the esteem of the Father. Even so we also should walk in newness of life. For if we've been planted together in the likeness of his death, we shall be also in the likeness of his resurrection. Knowing this, that our old man is crucified with him, that the body of sin might be destroyed, that henceforth we should not serve sin. For he that is dead is freed from sin. Now, if we be dead with Mashiach, we believe also that we shall live with him. We look at that when we looked at that lamb being offered. You know what I'm saying? Because we're looking at, we're going to offer ourselves up with him. Because he said his blood will be the token upon your household. When we look at when we have a Mashiach on us, that blood is that token. Because his blood is what cleanses us from all unrighteousness. And therefore, that's what would be on us. But when we would be in him, because we are pained and we crucified ourselves with him, then we would cry out. You know what I'm saying? By reason of the bondage, by reason of the adversity. We would cry out because this adversity would cause you. See, look at Amos 5 and 15. Not Amos. Hosea 5 and 15. Before we go back to Exodus 2. Still in John 8, 1 Timothy 1. I knew it's something. Because I think I hit the wrong thing. Ain't the access code 493-138? Because it's saying the wrong thing. Ain't nobody text me, so it might not be on nobody else. No, but I think I'm hitting the wrong thing. It's 712-432-1500. Because every now and then I hit the wrong thing. 4, 9, 3. 3, 1, 3, 8. Yeah. I can get the Hosea. Hosea 5 and 15. But we'll look at Hosea 5 and 12. Or 5 and 11. Matter of fact, just make it 9. Now we know Ephraim means that Elohim has made me fruitful in my affliction. Listen what he say. We'll make it 8. Say, blow ye the cornet in Gibeah and the trumpet in Ramah. Cry loud at Beth-Haven after thee, O Benjamin. Listen what he say. Blow the cornet of the trumpet and cry loud at Beth-Haven after the son of my right hand. Let's look at the name, meaning of the names of some of these cities here. Let's see what we get. So we look at Gibeah, and it means hill. Keep that in mind. Blow ye the cornet on the hill. The trumpet in Ramah, which also means hill. And then cry loud at Beth-Haven. And it means house of vanity or house of nothingness. So cry loud, say, blow ye the cornet in the hill and the trumpet in the hill. Cry loud at the voice of vanity, right? After thee, O son of my right hand. Now we know. Where did they take Hamashiach up to? Up on the hill, right? And let's sit back and let's look at when he cried aloud. What did he say? Abba, in thy hands I command my ruach, right? Or my Elohim, why hast thou forsaken me? You know what I'm saying? Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. How is he in a house of vanity? Because he say man's all state all together is vanity. You know what I'm saying? This is what he tell you that in Psalms, he tell you that in Proverbs, that a man's whole state is worthless. You know what I'm saying? Because when we turn around and look at this, why Hamashiach turns around and tell us what? The flesh profit nothing. It's worthless. When we in this fleshly body, it's a house of worthlessness. It's vanity. We're worthless without Elohim. See, let's sit back and look at something. 2 Samuel chapter 23. Hold on, let's finish Hosea 5. Let's finish that first. Let's just finish that first. So we know when he's doing this, O son of my right hand, it's talking about Mashiach on the stake. Listen what he says in verse 8. Ephraim shall be desolate in the day of the rebuke. Among the tribes of Yasharal, I made known that which shall surely be. He that made me fruitful in my affliction was definitely brought to nothing on the stake, right? He said he that didn't save, who didn't spare his own son, right? So when we turn around and look at it, it was that adversity that was able to make Hamashiach perfect. Listen what he say now. The princes of Yehuda were like them that removed the bound. Therefore I will pour out my wrath upon them like water. Now how do we say pour out his wrath upon them like water? Well, we know the princes of Yehuda is who? The rulers of the people, right? Or the scribes and the Pharisees, correct? So we look at them being the scribes and the Pharisees. He said they were like them who were them that removed the bound. They didn't want to allow this man to do his thing. They said we're going to lose our place with the Romans. Because they didn't want that adversity. They didn't want that trouble. You know what I'm saying? They would rather be seen of men. They chose that rather than affliction. That's kind of like what the young man told Job. He said, you chose this rather than affliction. He said, I hope the Most High pull you out unto the end. Because most people don't want that affliction. That's why when he go to talking about the fruit, the parable of the sower, and he say those when persecution or tribulation arise because of the word, by and by they are offended because they don't want to be made, they don't want to be purified. They don't want to be purged of their old sins. What's going to purge you from the old sins is the heat, the trial of your faith, because the purpose of the commandment is love out of a pure heart and faith unfeigned. When you turn around and you look at it, we're going to look at that with the 3 set apart children, Hanai, Mishael, and Azariah. Because of knowing the commandment of not worshiping idols, They served this man with a pure heart, and their faith was not faked, because they were willing to offer their lives. And through the fire, they were made pure. And they came out of the fire in a better state than what they were before they went in. Because you sit back and look at, even though they were in the fire did not touch them. We look at when you go through the furnace of the affliction, you're in the fire, but fire is actually not touching you. You know what I'm saying? It's a fire to purge your heart. So the backsliding, so all the iniquity and the things that men work are purged away, that you stand firm. Hello? Hello? No, all right. So let's finish this verse right here, right? So what would you take the difference? We say he poured out his wrath on them like water, right? Well, we know the first time what he did, he flooded the earth, right? And the next time he coming out like with fire. He's going to pour fire upon these people like water. And it's going to encompass the whole earth, right? Same way that the water encompassed the whole earth to bring forth his wrath on these people. Verse 11 says, Ephraim is oppressed and broken in judgment. Listen to what he said. Because he willingly walked after the commandment. Now listen to what he said. You're going to be broken in judgment, oppressed and broken in judgment because you willingly walked after the commandment. Now let's turn around and let's look at Mashiach being broken. You know what I'm saying? And oppressed because of the commandment. Let's look at Matthew chapter 27. We're still holding Hosea 5, and maybe we'll get back to Exodus chapter 2, and holding John 8, and 1 Timothy chapter 1, and that's about it, right? That's about it. So let's swing and look at Matthew 27. Wholly oppressed because of the commandment, because he walked wholly after. I'm going to have to use the app for this. Phone feel a little bit light. I had to take that piece off. It ripped. It wasn't going to hold the cards no more. It didn't make no sense to keep it on there. Hold on. If I can peel this. Peel this part off. Yeah. Now it doesn't look crazy with that on there like that. $27 and probably about 1. And it says, when the morning was coming, all the chief priests and the elders of the people took counsel against Yahushua to put him to death. Remember, Ephraim is being fruitful in your affliction. So we look at even in suffering, because we look at that with Joseph. Even in his suffering, he brought forth 2 sons, right? He brought forth fruit, even in his suffering. What happened? He went to jail without cause. You know what I'm saying? Accused of a crime he didn't commit. All these things, just like Hamashiach. And when they had him bound him, they led him away and delivered him to Pontius Pilate, the governor. Just what he said. They like the princes of Judah, them who would that bound somebody. See, therefore I'm gonna pour my wrath on him. Then Yehuda or Judas, which had betrayed him, when he saw that he was condemned and repented himself, brought again the 30 pieces of silver, saying to the chief priests and elders, saying that I have sinned, I have betrayed the innocent blood. And they say, what is that to us? See thou to that. Now remember, Hamashiach, the end of the commandment, the purpose of the commandment is love out of a pure heart and faith unfeigned. Hamashiach said, greater love had no man than this, that a man lay his life down for his friends. He said, because I have obeyed my father's commandments, if you obey my father's commandments, then the love that my father gives to me, he will give unto you. Because Hamashiach willingly went and did this. Because we not got to go read it. John 10 and 17 said what? I have a commandment of my Father to lay my life down and to pick it up again. No man take it from me. I lay it down of myself. He was telling them, I'm willing to be oppressed by the chief priests and scribes, right? Beaten, spit upon, stoned, crucified, and on the 3rd day raised again. So he was oppressed and broken in judgment. Because judgment, we know what our law say, the righteous always going to be vindicated, right? He said, I'll never justify the righteous over the wicked over the righteous. But we sit back and look at it on a natural sense where people be like, well, if he wasn't wicked, why was he killed? Because he became sin on the stake, right? Say, cursed be he that hangeth from a tree, right? So therefore, because he became sin, therefore that means Yahushua would have been what? Wicked. Because he was sin, right? All sin is wickedness in the eyes of Yahuwah. Therefore, Yah was justified in judgment to kill him. Therefore, Yah still didn't break his law. See, niggas missed that whole point. You know what I'm talking about? Because he was made sin for us who did no sin. Even though he committed no sin, and on the natural level, he should have not been condemned because he became sin and was the sin offering. Therefore, y'all know, we know his eyes are too pure to look upon sin, right? So therefore, if he becomes sin, then therefore he is wicked. So therefore, the judgment that proceeds forth is actually correct at that time, for the purpose of which Yah ordained, which was to redeem man from death. Now we're going to drop down a little bit and let's sit back and see how he's broken in judgment. We'll drop down about 27 and let's look at about verse 15. Matthew 27 and 15. Now that at that feast the governor was wont to release unto the people a prisoner, whom they would, and they had trouble. They had then a notable prisoner named Barabbas. Therefore, when they were gathered together, Pilate said unto them, Whom will you that I release unto you, Barabbas or Yahushua, who was called Mashiach? For he knew that for envy they had delivered him. And when he was sat down at the judgment seat, his wife said unto him, saying, Have thou nothing to do with that just man? For I have suffered many things this day in a dream because of it. But the chief priests and elders persuaded the multitude that they should ask Barabbas and destroy Yahushua. Broken in judgment, oppressed, they bound him. The princes of Judah bound him. Therefore I'm going to pour my wrath upon you like water. The governor answered and said unto them, Whither you of the twain will ye that I release unto you? They said, Barabbas. Pilate said unto them, What shall I do then with Yahushua, which is called Mashiach? They all said unto him, Let him be crucified. Hello? Do you see how the wrong judgment proceeded for? Hello? So you see how he was broken in judgment? He said he was oppressed. He said Ephraim was oppressed and broken in judgment. You see the people oppressing him. You know what I'm saying? You see the people oppressing him. They sitting there, they false accusing him. They saying he did this, they saying he did that. All this oppression. You know what I'm talking about? Then when you turn around and look at all that oppression, then he gets broken in judgment. But we just going to keep it on a little further with the broken in judgment. Let's keep it on a little further with the broken in judgment. And let's keep on reading in Matthew 27 and see what we get. And the governor said, Why? What evil have he done? But they cried out the more, saying, Let him be crucified. And when Pilate saw that he could prevail nothing, but rather atonement was made, he took water and washed his hand before the multitude, saying, I'm innocent of the blood of this just person. See ye to it. Then answered all the people and said, His blood be on us and on our children. That's why he say the princes of Judah, because the princes of Judah is the one who persuaded these people to do this. He said, Therefore I'm going to pour my wrath upon them like water. So you turn around and look at it when you look in 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, and he goes to talking about and discussing about how he's going to pour out wrath on all the people who do not believe the gospel of Yahushua HaMashiach. He said they'll be taken down with flaming vengeance, because that same wrath he poured out with water by the flood is the same wrath he's going to pour out on the earth by fire. Sometimes we don't even sit back and realize that when you sitting back looking at this here, man. Because we sit back and we don't understand and realize when we trod underfoot the commandments of Yahushua HaMashiach, we are no different than those who screamed out crucifying. Therefore, we are oppressing this man and breaking him in judgment. So let's look at about verse 26, where we're at, and let's look how the judgment continues to break the man. Then released he Barabbas unto them, and when he had scourged Yahushua, he delivered him to be crucified. Then the soldiers of the governor took Yahushua into the common hall and gathered unto a whole band of soldiers. They stripped him and put him on a scarlet robe. And when they had platted a crown of thorns, they put it on his head and a reed in his right hand. And they bowed the knee before him and mocked him, saying, Hail, King of the Yahudim! And they spit on him and took the reed and smote him in the head. And after they mocked him, they took the robe off from him and put his own raiment on him and led him away to crucify him. Then they tried to give him sour vinegar. You know what I'm saying? Then they walked past and they mocked the man. All these things having broken in judgment. The same way we turn around and we look at, we can come back to Hosea chapter 5. Same way we turn around and we look at that Joseph was broken in judgment. That Joseph was oppressed. What did these men do? They had done nothing. I think we stopped in about verse 11. I'll read it again. Hold on. I'm going to get to the second half of it in a second. He said, Ephraim is oppressed and broken in judgment because he willingly walked after the commandment. Now let's look at John 12 and 49. He said this man was broken and oppressed because he willingly walked after the commandment. Now, we had already referenced where he said he laid his life down of himself. My Father has given me a commandment that I may lay my life down. I lay it down of myself. No man take it from me, and I pick it up of myself. Who's going to sit back and look at they're going to be willingly oppressed and broken in judgment after the commandment? This is going back to what we started to in 1 Timothy chapter 1, verse 5, when he says the end or the purpose of the commandment is pure love out of a pure heart and faith unfeigned. That's a pure love for the Father and a strong faith that he would sit back and get I'll be willing to be broken and oppressed in judgment. You think you'd be willing to do something like that? If you ain't know nothing, if somebody just came to you and say, hey, if you willingly walk after everything that I tell you to do, you're going to be oppressed and broken in judgment. That's why Romans chapter 5 say, who would dare die for? That's a real, we sit back and we can look at it and we'll say certain stuff, but when you really sit back and analyze it and think about it though, you know what I'm saying? I'm doing everything that I'm supposed to do, and I'm going to be oppressed and broken in judgment. But what we're looking at is what we were reading in the Proverbs 25 and 4, is that the dross will make the silver made for the meat for the refiner. Let me read that properly. Somebody's not pleased. Let me read that 25 and 4 properly. It says, take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the finer. So we look at dross, and we mentioned that that's the basically broken all the way down the root word is sub, or your backslidings. You know what I'm saying? Your iniquities. So you take away that dross, it makes you meet. That trial of faith will purge all these things away. This heat, that oppression, those sufferings, that adversity is what makes the vessel meet for the refiner. Therefore, you can be, which we're going to read it, you'll be a vessel meet for the master's use. If you can purge yourself from all these things, this is what adversity does. That's why he said if you faint in the day of your adversity, your strength is small. You be ready to fall out and do all this here, that means your faith is small. Your faith is small. He says for verse 49, for I have not spoken of myself, but the Father when sent me, he gave me a commandment, what I should say and what I should speak. And I know that his commandment is life everlasting. Whatsoever I speak, therefore, even as the Father said unto me, so I speak. He know his commandment is life everlasting. This is why he say he's willing to offer himself as a ransom for many. This is why when we turn around and look at it, this is the patience of the Kadeshim and those who have the faith in Yahushua HaMashiach. Because you are willing to suffer and to be broken and oppressed for the commandment. Most people are not willing to be suffered and to be broken for the commandment because they don't want to endure any of these things. Let's come back to Hosea chapter 5. You think after this time they would be used to it? So we have to sit back and look at is that we could be oppressed. That's why he say, the devil shall cast some of you into prison, but fear not. For if you keep your faith unto the end, I'll give you a crown of life. You can't be fearful of the things that you're going to, because it's going to sit back and look at wrong judgment is going to proceed against you. You know what I'm saying? You seen that with Peter, he was thrown in jail. You got Paul preaching the word, he gets stoned, he gets locked up. These men did this willingly walking after the commandment, really sitting back looking at knowing the reward they were going to receive. Because the end of the commandment is love out of a pure heart and faith that is unfeigned. You can't fake faith. You can fake a lot of things, but you can't fake faith, trust in the Most High Yah. You can't fake that. Let's look at Hosea 5 and 12. He said, therefore I will be unto Ephraim as a moth, and the house of Yehudah as rottenness. When Ephraim saw his sickness and Yehudah saw his wound, then went Ephraim to the Assyrian and sent to King Jarab, yet could he not heal you, nor cure you of your wound. For I will be unto Ephraim as a lion, and as a young lion unto the house of Yehudah. I will tear and go away. I will take away, and none shall rescue him. And I will go and return to my place until they acknowledge their offense and seek my face, and in their affliction they will seek me early. So when you turn around and look at it, every time Yasharah was oppressed, that's when we turned around and went to crying for y'all. You ever notice that? Every time we were oppressed in Mizraim, We went to seeking for him. You read in the book of Judges, every time he delivered us into the hand of the Philistines or the Moabites or the Ammonites or whatever race of people it was, he said in that day of affliction, he said, you went to seeking me then. He said, you went to seeking me then. You went to looking for me then in the day of your affliction. Because in the day of your affliction, this is what's going to begin to purge the dross away from you or get the sin away from you. Let's look at something in Hosea 5. Excuse me. When we look at a moth and rottenness. Let's look at something with that. Now give me a second. Let's look at verse 12 real fast. He sit back and look at it. He said they'll be as a moth or herbage or grass. Is what moth is in this instance. And when we look at rottenness, we look at decay. Now when we sit back and look at it, right, he said when Ephraim, he said therefore he would be unto Ephraim as grass or herb, and to the house of Yehudah as rottenness or decay. Let's look at something in Hebrews chapter 8. I was talking to a brother about this the other day. So he said he's going to be to the house of Yehudah as something that decays or something that passes away. It's Hebrews 8 and 11. I'm sorry. 8 and 8 will be better. Hebrews 8 and 8. Because he sitting back talking about he's finding fault with Ephraim. Remember, Ephraim meaning being fruitful in the land of my affliction. He finds fault with him. He said, for finding fault with them, he said, behold, the days coming, saith Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Yasharal and with the house of Yehudah. Not according to the covenant I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Mizraim, because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith Yahuwah. What you hear in Hosea 5. But this is a covenant I will make with the house of Yasharal after those days, saith Yahuwah. I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them an Elohim, and they shall be to me a people. And they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, know Yahuwah. For they shall all know me from the least to the greatest. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. All because Ephraim was oppressed and broken in judgment, because he willingly walked after the commandment to bring forth this new covenant that your sins could be forgiven, because at the end of the day, the end of the commandment is faith unfeigned and charity out of a pure heart. He said, in that he saith, a new covenant have he made the first. Now that which decay and wax old is ready to vanish away. Well, he said he would be unto Yehudah as rottenness of that which decays. So to be that, so you sit back and you looking at Hamashiach coming up on the stake is what called the first covenant to decay or vanish away. To where something greater and something better would come in. Something that would be able to quicken you to life everlasting. Again, showing you that the flesh profiteth nothing. It was the Ruach that preserved this man and made him alive, because he followed the commandment out of a pure heart of love and faith, not faith. You know what I'm saying? And you turn around and you look at this. This is what brought him in. Let's look at Romans chapter 5, what I mentioned earlier about this here man. Because he was broken and oppressed, because he willingly walked after the commandment. Romans 5. Where is it at? And 6. 5 and 6. Remember, the children of Yasharal had no strength at all when we read about what's in Hosea chapter 5. He said, for when we were yet without strength, in due time Mashiach died for the ungodly. For scarcely for a righteous man will one die. Yet peradventure for a good man, some would even dare to die. But Elohim committed his love towards us, and that we were yet sinners, Mashiach died for us. Much more than being now justified by his blood, we shall be saved from wrath through him. See, that's the whole key thing, but we sitting back looking at what we read earlier about the faith unfeigned. When they put the blood on the doorpost, that caused them to be saved from the wrath that was going to fall on Mizraim. Now you turn around and you look at it, you put the blood on the doorpost of your heart, and this is what's going to save you. That's what we have to look at, and that's what we have to think about, and that's what we have to measure. When we sit back and we measure these things, and we think on these things, we see that this man was broken and oppressed because he willingly did something. Hello? What's going on, Stan? He willingly did something. He willingly walked after the commandment, knowing that I could be oppressed and that I could be broken in judgment, but I'm going to willingly do this. because he would be made as grass. He said, I made Ephraim as grass and Yehudah as rottenness. Well, we know the Mashiach came up out of the tribe of Yehudah, so he made him decay. Now, we know he didn't suffer corruption, but he made him decay to become a curse, for the curse to decay, for death to decay, for the first covenant which could not make a man perfect, for that to decay. You know, I was tripping, right? I'll be honest with you. These dudes had a debate the other day. Some dudes I know, a dude I know from Detroit and a dude from Oklahoma. They were debating a Christian. Was the law done away? And he asked them, how do they keep the feast according to Numbers 29? Now, some of y'all don't know, we went over Numbers 29 a long time ago, but it talks about a meat offering, a drink offering, a bread offering, all these things that you got to offer on these feast days continually. All these things testify to Mashiach. Well, these brothers not being skillful enough to go through it, they just went to Hebrews 10 and just talked about the sacrificial law being done away with. Not really and truthfully answering this man's question without a shadow of a doubt, that when you partake in the feast and you drink of the wine and you eat the unleavened bread and that you do all these things, that you are keeping the feast in accordance to the law, even without doing all these quote unquote ritualistic things. You know what I'm saying? That a lot of brothers sit back, like I heard a brother say, if you doing Passover and you ain't sacrificing no lamb, and you ain't doing this and you ain't doing that, you ain't keeping Passover. This is what they think that they doing, and they be, even though it's in the Torah, and they thinking that they gonna be justified by these things. But at the end of the day, you're not really doing these things out of a pure heart of love and faith unfeigned. You're really doing these things to boast in your flesh and to boast in yourself, not necessarily to boast in Yah. So, what was I holding before that? Come on back to Hosea chapter 5. We'll finish that on out. We'll be done in a second. So when we look in verse 13, right? And it says, Ephraim saw his sickness and Yehudah his wound. Then Ephraim went to Assyrian and sent to King Jarab. So let's look at that, and let's look at Jarab, and let's look at him. Let's see what we got about him. We look in verse 13 with him. And we look at Yarab, and it means contender. You know what I'm saying? So when we look at that there, it says Ephraim sent to the Assyrian and sent to King Yarab, but he could not heal you nor cure you of your wound. So when we look at, sit back and you look at it, Ephraim saw his sickness, and Yehudah saw his wound. And they went Ephraim to the Assyrian and sent to King Yarab, yet he could not heal you or nor cure you of your wound. Because now I'm going to show you something, right? Jeremiah chapter 30. Because we done already read it in Matthew 27. It just came to my head to put this on here. Jeremiah chapter 30. About verse 8, I want to say. No, it's not 8. It's verse 12. Jeremiah 30 and 12. Jeremiah 30 and 12. I'm going to use this app to read off of versus the other one. And it says, For thus saith Yahuwah, thy bruise is incurable, and thy wound is grievous. There is none to plead thy cause, that thou may be bound up. Thou hast no healing medicines. They say what he said, who gonna heal your cause? Who gonna bound you up? Who gonna heal your wound? He said, King Yarab can't do it. He said, all thy lovers have forgotten thee, they seek thee not. For I have wounded thee with the wound of an enemy, with the chastisement of a cruel one, for the multitude of thy iniquity, because thy sins were increased. Why cry thou for thine affliction? Just like Mashiach was on the stage. Why are you crying? Thy sorrow is incurable, for the multitude of thine iniquity, because thy sins were increased, have I done these things unto thee. Therefore all they that devour thee shall be devoured, and all thy adversaries, every one of them shall go into captivity. And they that spoil thee shall be a spoil, and all they that prey upon thee will I give for a prey. For I will restore health unto thee, and I will heal thee of thy wounds, saith Yahuwah, because they call thee an outcast, saying, This is Zion, who no man seek after. Well, we already read in Matthew 27, the people sat up on the Pilate, and Pilate said, let him go. He said, I wash my hands of this. He said he washed his hands of the sin because he said Ephraim sent to the Assyrians. He that's fruitful in our affliction, sent to the Assyrians. Let me sit back and look at what Assyria mean real fast. Let's sit back and look at it as you seeing them talking about going to Pilate. See if Pilate can deliver him out of their hands. He said, man, what you gonna do with Yahushua who called Mashiach? They say, man, we want Barabbas, man. But what we're looking at is that pure commandment, that the end of the commandment, that love, that faith that was unfeigned out of his hand, knowing that all this adversity was going to make him pure in the end. And when we look at Assyria, it means a step. So it says, he that's fruitful in affliction went to a step, who sent to King Arab and asked him to heal him. But he said he couldn't do it. He didn't have it in his ability to be able to heal him and to take this wound away from him. Because he had to go to him, the only person who was able to heal, which is his father. He said, I can't heal you or cure you of your wound. You turn around and sit back and look at Yahuwah and say, I can heal you and cure you of your wound. Then you turn around and look at, we know Psalm 104 say that he is, I think it's Psalm 104. I might be wrong on that. But I know one of these Psalms state that. Well, you know in Deuteronomy 32, y'all say, I heal, I kill, and I make alive. I wound and I heal. You sit back and you gonna sit back and you realize that when you crucify yourself with Mashiach and you go through these afflictions and you go through all of these things with him, that the same person who wounded you, and that's Psalms 103, not 104 that I mentioned. And he said, he forgive all iniquities, he heal all thy diseases. All the things that can afflict the man's heart. The word can heal you from it if you just allow it. If you allow it to come in and you allow it to do what it is that it does. Because the word can heal you. The word can cut you. The word can kill you. And the word can make you alive in one fell swoop. But you're going to have to be willing to let that fire purge that draws from you. Hold on a second. Y'all understand what I'm saying? That's what the adversity will do for you. That's why he said, in the day of your adversity, you'll seek me early. He said, I'm going to return to my place. See, the father sat back and he sat back in Shamahim. He returned to his place. They say, in the day of your affliction, you'll seek me early. Not as if the son was not seeking it. Don't you sit back and you realize that that's the only time that most people come seek Yah, when the trouble's laid on their head. Let's look at something, I think, 1 Corinthians chapter 4. Let's just look at the afflictions and the infirmities that Paul speaks of. That doesn't mean that everybody's going to go through these things. It's just that these things will get you. 1 Corinthians chapter 4 and about verse 9. It just will get you where you need to be. For I think that Elohim set forth us the apostles last, as it were appointed to death. For we are made a spectacle unto the world, and to Malachim, and to men. For we are fools for Mashiach's sake. But ye are wise in Mashiach, and we are weak. Ye are strong, and ye are honorable, but we are despised. Even unto this present hour we both hunger and thirst, and are naked, and are buffeted, and have no certain dwelling place, and labor, working with our own hands. Being reviled, we bless. Being persecuted, we suffer it. Being defamed, we entreat. We are made as the filth of the world, and are the offscouring of all things unto this day. I write not these things to shame you, but as my beloved sons I warn you. Though you have 10,000 instructors in Mashiach, you have ye not many fathers, for in Mashiach Yahushua I have begotten you through the gospel. Wherefore I beseech you, be ye followers of me. For this cause have I sent unto you Timotheus, who is my beloved son and faithful in the master, who shall bring you into remembrance of my wage which be in Mashiach, as I teach everywhere in every synagogue. Now we got to sit back and you look at all these things that they endured. This is why they had told the people in Acts that through much tribulation you must enter into the kingdom of Shamahim. Because all these things allow you to be made perfect, that you can be a vessel meet for the master's use. How can you be a vessel meet for the man's use if you haven't been purged of your own sin? See, Come over here to 2 Peter chapter 1, 2 Peter said. That's what the fire will do. That's why I say, are you able to be immersed with the immersion that I am immersed with? Are you able to drink from the cup that I drink from? This is 2 Peter chapter 2 and about. First chapter 1. 2 Peter chapter 1 and verse 3. My apologies. 2 Peter chapter 1 and about verse 3. 2 Peter chapter 1 and about verse 3. And it says, according as his divine power hath given unto us all things that pertain unto life and godliness through the knowledge of him that has called us to esteem and virtue, whereby are given unto us exceeding and great and precious promises, that by these you might be partakers of the divine nature, having escaped the corruption that is in the world through lust. And besides this, giving all diligence, add to your faith virtue, and to virtue knowledge, and to knowledge temperance, and to temperance patience, and to patience godliness, and to godliness brotherly kindness, and to brotherly kindness charity. For if these things be in you and abound, they make you that you shall neither be barren nor unfruitful in the knowledge of our Master Yahushua HaMashiach. But he that lack these things is blind, and cannot see afar off, and hath forgotten that he was purged from his old sins. Wherefore the rather, brethren, give diligence to make your calling and election sure. For if you do these things, ye shall never fall. So when we look at that, the end of the commandment is love out of a pure heart and faith unfeigned. And if you get back and you're serious and you're diligent in your faith, because we've went through this before, and you take that pureness, and you take the knowledge of Elohim, and through that knowledge of Elohim, you learn to control your flesh, because you allow the word to dictate your actions and not your flesh. And then through that, you would learn patience. And then through that patience, you would learn godliness, because Elohim is patient. Slow to wrath, slow to anger. So I will say, be swift to hear and slow to speak. You know what I'm saying? All these things are showing you the attributes of Elohim. And through this here, you have brotherly kindness, because the law teaches us to love your neighbor as you love yourself. The same way that Mashiach did. Then you turn around and you look at it, and he said, through that love. He said, when you do all of these things, when you add these things to your faith, this is for the purpose of the commandment. You have a pure love towards Elohim, and your faith cannot be fake, because it will be manifest in your behavior and your dealings one with another. You can't fake that. This is the whole purpose of the commandment. This is what he was teaching us. Now, I would say we were going to go back to Exodus, but I'm going to just paraphrase it. When we sit back and we look at Exodus 1 and 2, they were killing all the Hebrew babies. They were making us work with brick and mortar and slime, and taking us through all that hard bondage and all that affliction. We cried unto our Elohim. In the day of our affliction, we sought him early. He had went back into his place. We had no knowledge of him, but in the day of our affliction, we sought him early. And he was heard of us in that day when we cried unto him by reason of the bondage. Same way when Mashiach was on the tree. And the day of his affliction, he sought him early. He was heard of him because of it. So when we turn around and you look at it, when you're going through something, you're being afflicted for whatever reason. In the day of that affliction, you ought to seek your Elohim early. You coming out here with beer, you want to show no beer? Hey, root beer, beer nonetheless. I like beer. With roots in it. That's strong. I drank some barks the other day when we was at Chuck E. Cheese. I had a long time, but I forgot what barks bite.
Just because you want to drink soda.
No, I mean barks always bit though. Now I'm talking about if it's good and it's fresh and it's not flat, but barks will bite you right in the back of your throat. That's what you want. The smooth root beer is A&W. He don't bite. You know what I'm saying? I was a root beer connoisseur. I tried all types. You know what I'm saying? I like barks myself. A&W was cool. Sometimes I wanted the cream soda though. You know what I'm saying? Get your A&W, get you some ice cream. You got you something going on right now. But when we turn around and we look at it, right, because we know the Egyptians were afflicted and the plagues came on them, but their hearts were hardened and they wouldn't turn. The children of Yasharal was afflicted beforehand. But when they came and the plagues were coming in, they weren't afflicted. And then when they were going through the wilderness, that's when they began to be afflicted. And they didn't want to take it. Some did, some didn't. So let's come back over here to oh, I'm saying.
Sound like you wanted to one. Dog.
Yeah.
To the head.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that. What was that? Come over here back to 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 5. I mean 1 Timothy chapter 1 verse 5. First Timothy chapter 1. Now the end of the commandment is charity out of a pure heart and of a good conscience. Because this is what will give you a good conscience and a clear mind before Yah. And a faith unfeigned. From which some having swerved have turned aside unto vain jangling, desiring to be teachers of the Torah, understanding neither what they say nor whether they affirm. But we know the Torah is good if a man use it lawfully, knowing this, that the law is not made for a righteous man, but for the lawless and disobedient, for the ungodly and for sinners, for the unkadesh and profane, for murderers of fathers and murderers of mothers, for manslayers, for whoremongers, for them that defile themselves with mankind, and for men stealers, for liars, for perjured persons, and if there be any other thing that is contrary to sound doctrine, according to the glorious gospel of the blessed Elohim, which was committed to my trust. And I thank Mashiach Yahushua, our master, who have enabled me, for that he have made me faithful, putting me into the ministry, who was before a blasphemer, and a persecutor and injurance, but I obtained mercy because I did it ignorantly in unbelief. And the grace of our master was exceeding abundant with faith and love, which is in Mashiach Yahushua. This is a faithful saying worthy of all exception, that Mashiach Yahushua came into the world to save sinners, of whom I am chief. We started, and when we started, we looked at when Paul went through what he went through, and the Mashiach made him blind, and he did all of these things to him. He took him through that affliction, and he put that upon him to purge that injuries and that blasphemy and that persecution from him, that he could make him a vessel meet for his use. Because remember, he told Ananias, like, this is a chosen vessel unto me, let him alone. In order to make Paul a chosen vessel, he had to take that dross from him. In order us to make us chosen vessels, he said, if you keep my commandments indeed, you'll be a peculiar treasure to me indeed, above all people upon the face of the earth. He told me, he said, I had to humble thee and to suffer thee to hunger and take you through this wilderness and cause all these things to happen unto you, because I had to purge the things of Mizraim from you. He said, everything you learned on the other side of the flood, you were going to have to leave it. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm talking about? Hold on. You know, he had to set us up to be able to get all that. Like I told y'all the other day, all they knew was Egypt. All we know is America. So in order to be that way, we had to go through something. And he had to purge that thought process and that old mind and that old thing. That's why I say purge you out the old lump and make you a new lump, that you may be unleavened in Mashiach. In order to be able to be that new lump, to purge out that old, you had to set fire to that dough. You know what I'm saying? The dough just didn't rise, but they still put heat to it. So you could be meat for the refiner, a vessel for the refiner, like Proverbs said. You still got to put heat to it. Your adversity and your afflictions is the heat. You know what I'm saying? That's why Peter said the trial of your faith being more precious than gold. More precious than gold. That's why he say take away the dross from the silver, and there shall come forth a vessel for the finer or for the refiner. You take away the sin from the silver. You take away the impurities from the silver. You can be a vessel meet for the master's use. That's all he did with Paul. That's all he did with Mashiach. Mashiach turned around looking at, he's a man, flesh and blood. He's vanity. Because he says in Ecclesiastes, man's state altogether is vanity. He's worthless. He's flesh and blood. He has no meat. Y'all can't use that. He said flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of Shamahin. So therefore I had to take him through the furnace of affliction. I got to immerse him with fire. When I immerse him with fire, it will purge all the iniquities, which would be that flesh that he could come forth a new creature. That's as we read, the rottenness or the decay, the old things pass away. That's why he say, he that be a Mashiach is a new creature. The old things have passed away. Or the rottenness or the rock bottom, it's gone, it's decayed, it's out of here. The only thing that can get that out of there is fire or adversity. Now let's look at Daniel chapter 1. Because I mentioned it and I would be remiss if I didn't use it. And then we'll look at 2 Timothy 2:19. My apologies, Daniel chapter 2. It's actually Daniel chapter 3. My apologies yet again. Daniel 3 and 6. And we'll drop around and move around. You got to remember, these three children, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, they were high up working for the king of Babylon. But y'all still had to take them to the dross to see that at the end of the commandment, will it be a pure love out of a good conscience and faith, not faith. And let's see if these men had a good conscience, pure love, and didn't fake their faith. Whoso fall not down and worship shall the same hour be cast in the midst of a burning fiery furnace, which is not the work of the image that Nebuchadnezzar set up. Therefore, at that time, when the people heard the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, and all kinds of music, all the people, the nations, and the languages fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Wherefore at that time certain Chaldeans came near and accused the Yahudim. They spake and said to King Nebuchadnezzar, O king, live forever. Thou, king, hast made a decree that every man that shall hear the sound of the cornet, the flute, the harp, the sackbut, the psaltery, and the dulcimer, and all kinds of music, shall fall down and worship the golden image. And whoso fall not down and worship, that he should be cast into the midst of a burning fiery furnace. There are certain Yahudim whom thou hast set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have not regarded thee. They serve not thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Then Nebuchadnezzar in his rage and fury commanded to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then they brought these men before the king. Nebuchadnezzar spake and said unto them, It is true, O Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, do ye not serve my powers, nor worship the golden image which I have set up? Let's drop on down to about verse 17 or 16. Now he asked, who can deliver out of my hand? This is what he's saying. That's why you turn around and you look at it, right? He said, they son unto King Yerab, who can heal your wound? You come to the King Nebuchadnezzar. Can Nebuchadnezzar save you? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our Elohim, who is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thy hand, O king. But if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. Do you see a love out of a pure heart? No fake faith. Good conscience, too. Paul stated, he said, I exercise myself to be void of offense towards Elohim and man, to have a good conscience. It's good to have a mind. We can read that in 1 John 2, chapter 3 in a minute. It's good to have a mind where you know that your conscience is strong and bold towards your Elohim. Then was Nebuchadnezzar full of fury, and the form of his visions was changed against Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Therefore he spake and commanded that they should heat the furnace 7 times more than it was wont to be heated. Now you know what them 7 times more is? That's the 7 abominations where the Mashiach went through. Heated up 7 more times. You know what I'm saying? False witness. You know what I'm talking about? Discord among brethren. Shedding innocent blood, heated up 7 more times. Now, Paul even stated all these things. They bear false witness against Paul. He was in the midst of false brethren. You know what I'm talking about? They were trying to sow discord amongst the people. All of these things. That's that fire to get that dross from you. These men were, he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and cast them into the burning fiery furnace. These men were bound in their coats, their hosen, and their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew those men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. See, this is going back to when we talking about that parable of the sword. That tribulation, that persecution be too heavy for some of these people that slay them. They can't take it. These three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound in the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astonished and rose up in haste and spake and said unto his counselors, Did we not cast 3 men bound in the midst of the fire? They answered and said unto the king, True. O king, he answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire. They have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the son of Elohim. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the mouth of the burning fiery furnace and spake and said, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, you servants of the Most High Elohim, come forth hither. And Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came forth in the midst of the fire. The princes and the governors and captains and the king's counselors, being gathered together, saw these men whose body the fire had no power, nor was an hair of their heads singed, neither was their coats changed, nor the smell of fire had passed on them. I want you to sit back and realize that when you go through the fiery furnace of affliction and that adversity and the purge away that draws, there's not going to be a hair of your head singed. Your coat ain't going to be no smell of fire on you. Your body's not going to be literally burned. Your heart is going to be burned. Your conscience is going to be burned. The commandment and the law, the purpose of it is to purge your conscience of dead works. That's what the adversity is for, to remove all of those things. 1 John chapter 3. And then we'll end in 2 Timothy 2 and 19.
Yeah.
1 John 3 and 18.
Sure.
My little children, let us not love in word, neither in tongue, but in deed and in truth. And hereby we know that we are of the truth and shall assure our hearts before him. For if our heart condemn us, Elohim is greater than our heart and know all things. Beloved, if our heart condemn us not, then we have confidence towards Elohim. And whatsoever we ask, we receive of him, because we keep his commandments and do those things that are pleasing in his sight. And this is his commandment, that we should believe on the name of his son, Yahushua HaMashiach, and love one another as he gave us commandment. And he that keepeth his commandments dwell in him, and he in him. And hereby we know that he abide in us by the Ruach, which he hath given us. So that's when you know you got a good conscience towards Elohim. It's not going to condemn you. 2 Timothy 2 and 19. Nevertheless, the foundation of Elohim stands sure, having this seal. The master know them that are his. Let everyone that name the name of Mashiach depart from iniquity. But in a great house there are not only vessels of gold and of silver, but of also of wood and of earth, and some to honor and some to dishonor. If a man therefore purge himself from these, he shall be a vessel unto honor, sanctified and meet for the master's use, and prepared unto every good work. Flee also youthful lusts, but follow righteousness, faith, charity, peace, with them that call out of the master out of a pure heart. So, hallelujah for Yahusha in the word. I hope y'all understood all this stuff.